Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Did Union Organizer Chris Smalls Use Fox host Tucker Carlson, or was it the other way around? So, there has been a fair amount of coverage of both the union drive at the Staten Island warehouse of Amazon, where they've won an election to start the Amazon labor union. ALU, headed by Chris Smalls, has very successfully won at least their first hurdle to representing the workers at that warehouse. I believe there are, I think, about 5 to 8,000 workers at the warehouse. I think maybe it's 8,000 actually. So it's a huge warehouse, and it's really a great triumph for labor, that mostly achieved by Chris Smalls, along with some other people, kind of in the background and not without much help from other organizations. And anyway, but one of the controversies, which I've talked about in another episode, and also got into some disputes on Twitter with some people about, was that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had had been talking with Chris Smalls about attending a rally to support the workers last summer. And in the last minute, she called this off, saying there were some scheduling issues and some security issues. So, and in retrospect, it looks bad that she did that. And certainly, it doesn't necessarily call into question her general support for labor, though some people are trying to make it about that. And people who are disinclined to give AOC the benefit of the doubt are saying this is a sign of a deeper problem with her. But it certainly would have been nice for her to be, standing alongside Chris Smalls and the Amazon labor union at that point in time. Maybe it wouldn't have helped. Maybe it would have drawn more negative publicity to their union drive and potentially, interfered with it. But, at least in retrospect, it looks like, shoulda, coulda from the point of view of AOC. Anyway, and apparently Chris Smalls at the time was, pissed off about this turn of affairs. Anyway, so Tucker Carlson invited Chris Smalls onto his program earlier, now last week, in the middle of the week, after he won his election, and attempted to make the segment with Smalls. I'll put links to various analyses in the description box of that occasion. So he invited him, and Chris Smalls accepted to go on a Tucker Carlson show. And Tucker Carlson was attempting to use Chris Smalls. He was interested in Chris Smalls, was pretty transparently to try to damage AOC's political and otherwise reputation. And that's pretty much the sum of his interest in Chris Smalls and the Amazon labor union. And so, and he started to try to make the segment about that, and Chris Smalls, in his in his favor, or in my view, he immediately parried that, and he said, "Look, everybody, no one showed up for the labor union. He, in other words, he didn't want to make it between him and AOC. He just was saying none of these politicians showed up to support them. So that and he was obviously, if you listen to the tone of Small's voice and how he was describing it, he didn't want to, make this segment about AOC or about what she did or didn't do. He was just saying it was about his union or his new nascent organizing and union effort, and and about his work and so forth and so on. So and he was, if you listen to the segment, you realize that, and you see Carlson's reactions, you see that Carlson failed to, in terms of the audio track, in terms of what was said in that segment, while the chyron and while the images were of AOC and about one of his efforts to take AOC down one or two notches, and he called her Sandy, Cortez, so forth and so on. He makes all kinds of disparaging references to her. That he was and they've had their interactions in the past. So in other words, AOC has addressed him on Twitter when he has made all kinds of negative comments about her from all kinds of angles. And she has also done some offense with regard to Tucker Carlson. So anyway, if you listen to the audio track, he failed to make it about AOC, and Smalls resisted his effort. But if you look at the visuals, and if you assume that right wing opportunists, both Tucker Carlson himself and also people who use and Tucker Carlson as a springboard or as a permission slip to do other segments that are like it, that basically would then be a riff on this, they will, in my view, ignore the subtleties of what Chris Small said, and in the what I'm calling is the audio track of that segment, and they will use the chyron and use the intent that Carlson had, and they will claim that it was a victory in taking a dent, putting a dent in AOC. And also another element to this is that now this is taking a step back to those who don't watch either cable TV or analyses of cable TV. Tucker Carlson is the highest rated evening talk show host on cable TV, and he has several million people watching him every night. And he is a right-winger. I consider him to be a neo-fascist or a fascist. He's an admirer of Viktor Orban. He's been a booster of Trump, though there are some elements to which he seems to be jockeying with Trump for power within the Republican Party. He seems to be someone who maybe is looking at Trump. He's a much smarter man than Trump is, and he is trying to learn from Trump's mistakes and his weaknesses to maybe have a run himself at the presidency. And so anyway, part of his neo-fascist or quote-unquote populist political or discourse strategy is to appear to be sympathetic to the working people of the United States in ways that don't challenge other right-wing talking points, and including basically a just world hypothesis that basically people get what they deserve, and that there is a hierarchy of men over women, Christians over non-Christians, whites over non-whites, all and so forth and so on, that he supports, and that he is he makes up all kinds of things. He's quite capable of lying on TV, and is unscrupulous in his use of the medium to make propaganda, as is the role really of much of Fox. But he is their star, and he uses the permissions that Fox gives to its anchors and so forth and so on to lie and to promote racism and fascism, among other things. He uses that to the maximum, and he's sometimes pushing the limits, the envelope, in ways that suggest that Fox is just they don't care about any of the norms of broadcasting and so forth and so on that existed just a few years ago, and that they're willing to let him continue to push those limits. So anyway, his use of Smalls in a way beyond it would be to show that he has an interest in the working class, that he is someone who, and he can also outflank MSNBC and CNN on the left in some ways by his populism, which is something that also Trump did. The Democratic Party and those media institutions that are aligned closely with it, the establishment of the Democratic Party, are largely anti-labor and are against programs like Medicare for All, a bunch of different other things. Now, Carlson is not for Medicare for All, but he sometimes throws he tries to do flanking both on the left and the right. So he tries to mix it up. And so in this way, Smalls, in agreeing to appear on the program, is falling into Carlson's playlist, so to speak, of instances where he was, so to speak, interested in labor, interested in the plight of the common man or woman, and that he was allowing someone like Smalls to be on air, and he was to be interviewed and to make some very unconvincing claims that he was with Smalls. Now, he also, just another subtlety to the kind of anti-establishment, quote unquote anti-establishment efforts that Carlson does. He considers Amazon to be, quote unquote, a woke corporation, so part of the tech elite. So he kind of wants, it's not quite about labor versus capital. It's about honest working people versus the liberal elite in corporations in Silicon Valley and Hollywood companies, media companies. So he's wanting to create a culture war there rather than a class war. So or rather to shade the class war into a culture war, and with sort of echoes also of, for instance, some anti-Semitism potentially there, or it certainly has echoes of that, and it gets often louder in some segments with Carlson. In any case, so the question then is: so did Smalls' efforts to parry and to create an audio track, literally, of Carlson failing to smear AOC, and also but allowing Carlson to make false statements about or false or insincere statements of solidarity with Amazon workers, did he still get something out of it for working people and for Amazon, for his own cause at Amazon? And then, I can't definitively answer that, but it requires, and this is one to have an optimistic interpretation of what the Fox viewers are going to be listening for, and whether they're even worth reaching, okay, especially the ones who view Tucker Carlson. There are parts of Fox that are less ideological than Carlson, and there are some people like Nomiki Konst and so forth and so on who do occasionally appear on, who is a left winger, who appear occasionally on Fox, and they're able to represent their positions and not be totally be made part of a sideshow. So there's a way in which you and these are people who will often not be invited upon the quote unquote more liberal networks, who are more dogmatic in terms of how they view a left. In other words, their left has to be very tame in terms of its anti-corporate message, in terms of its pro-labor message, and they tend more toward a culture or woke identitarian approach to being liberal or progressive or so forth and so on. So it becomes then on Fox there is this small opening that Smalls is trying to use, and then also that has been used. And I mean, Bernie Sanders appeared on Fox a couple times, so that that these are places where now it does appear that Fox is trying to use these as a bludgeon in a way against. It's trying to divide the Democrat, what usually would be considered to be the Democratic coalition, by saying, well, look, the left wing of your coalition is actually coming to us for its media, its interviews, its broadcasting its message, and we're using that to show how corrupt, for instance, the people who are at the top of the ticket often in the Democratic Party, the like Bidens and the Pelosi's and Schumer's and so forth and so on. So anyway, so the question then is, so Smalls was able to send out a message about he was being interviewed in a reasonably after he parried the efforts to turn it into a fight between him and AOC. He, made, some reasonable statements about, it was about his work and about the work of the people in his team or working in the warehouses, the activists who are making these unionization drives potentially a success or likely a success. And anyway, this so whether that message then being sent out to the receivers, in other words, to the people who will be listening, what are they listening for? So, in my opinion, most of the listeners of Carlson's program are looking for you can call it a theater of cruelty or whatever. You can call it a sadistic. They're looking for people to be bashed. Okay, the libs to be bashed. And so if there's any way that they can, so they're looking, and Carlson acts the bully to bully the people who verbally, okay, he's not physically the bully, but verbally bully the perceived enemies of this largely far right audience, often older, okay, audience that. Now, a few of those people might be people who would get something out of Smalls' account of his union drive, and also note that their hero, Carlson, is saying that there's some role for unions somewhere. But on the other hand, my view is that Carlson is potentially a more effective evil than Trump, in the sense of that he could become a Hitlerian figure, okay, in American politics, And I know we're not supposed to compare American politicians to Adolf Hitler, but anyway, he, a successful neo-fascist politician, and who will use a populistic, some populist rhetoric, so forth and so on, to bash the Democratic Party and get into power, and basically then get rid of democracy as we know it, and also disempower even further black voters, Hispanic voters, marginalized groups of all groups, all varieties, and will create this white ethno state that seems to be the goal of the current Republican Party. Anyway, so I am not super optimistic about Small's use of this forum, and I don't think that message is going to come out really loud and clear. There are people who are, and I think he did a good job in that context once he agreed to be on that program. And it's a shame that he doesn't get invited on. Maybe he will, as a consequence, get invited on some MSNBC, on Rachel Maddow, or Ali Velshi, certainly. Mehdi Hassan is probably someone he could definitely appear on the show, and he's an MSNBC host, not a particularly centrally programmed or slotted one. Maybe Lawrence, so anyway, so he's someone who could, he could use this media appearance to create other media appearance for himself. So in that case, that would be a net good, that he would be using then this effort by Carlson to his benefit and to the benefit of the Amazon unionization effort. But then, and there's another component to this. I've been keeping out of this discussion, but now I'm going to introduce into this discussion the third party involved in it, who is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her reputation as a politician. Now, as you know, if you look at Politics 2100, you know that I'm a supporter of AOC's. I've been a supporter of hers since before her primary victory against Crowley. And I believe in the project of getting pro-labor, progressive legislators into office on multiple levels of government, but in Congress as well. And she has done, in my opinion, quite a good job in that area, or very good to very good job in that area. She could do better in some areas and so forth and so on, but she's done, let's say, very, very good, maybe even to excellent job. I don't know. But we don't have much standard of comparison because she's probably one of the most pro-labor legislators we've had in 50 years, or in the Congress. So, or certainly, one of the most pro-labor, and especially the current working class, the current the working class, not as an organized power as it was 50 or 60 years ago in politics, but a working class that has been battered, and a union movement that has been battered over the last 40 or 50 years. So so she's coming at it at a time of a low point in the level of organization of the working class into trade unions. So she's been doing, in my opinion, a very good job. So she's one of the top legislators in that area. So anyway, she has been his appearance. I think he probably should have known that was the reason why he was invited, and he made the decision. Smalls made the decision to go on, and he tried to parry that effort by Carlson, but still the chyron exists, and still the use against AOC exists to try to damage her. And there are many, many people now who claim to be on the left, or in this case, Chris Smalls, I guess, maybe is on the left, but he's a union guy, and he's an organizer, and that is the constituency of a left, or might be the constituency of a left, and so he is going to get, in general, more sympathy from a left than a right, okay, and a center, definitely than a center. So, and more help in the in terms of passing legislation, maybe even in appointments to the NLRB, all these things in the future. So, she is a natural ally of his, and so in realizing that, I think, and this is my hope, is that somehow there is a future point in time where the two of them appear on the same stage. Okay, it doesn't have to be one begging the other to do that, but somehow that they're and along with other legislators, along with Tiffany Caban, along with a New York councilwoman, New York City councilwoman. But anyway, so that I'm just throwing out names. There are many names that could Gustavo Rivera. So anyway, so that they can show solidarity with each other in a way, and that this will mitigate, I think, the idea that basically that you could throw punches at AOC nonstop and she'll just take it. Okay, it's like I think that she is doing, again, a very good job. Could be better in some areas, but she is also, being a punching bag for the left is not one of her jobs. I mean, she will get punches, and she actually throws a pretty good punch back, but she needs to be recognized for doing good work, at least, or very good work, and also for her good intentions and her good and with the very little power that she has relative to someone like a Nancy Pelosi or a Chuck Schumer. She is doing a fair amount, okay, and along with other squad members and so forth and so on. And I hope they get organized more so they can do more, and I hope they get more. And I'm trying to work on the background, trying to enlarge that group by some volunteer work that I'm doing and so forth and so on. But anyway, and then we can judge in a way whether they are, how useful they are and how good they are at their job, if they're a larger critical mass within Congress. But anyway, I think that reflex of using her, because of her high profile, and she's a relatively smooth, not in an authentic way as far as I'm concerned, but she's a natural politician, and she has and it appears she makes certain things appear effortless, so people think that they can maybe throw more crap at her way, okay, and she'll just be able to roll with it, or she just is so on top of the mountain, and no one, or or they claim that she's sold out and so forth and so on, because she is relatively politic in certain ways, and seems to be able to show that she can roll with, she doesn't appear to be corrupt, in my opinion, but she, certainly is able to tactically ally herself with people who I think she doesn't like and doesn't want to be really working with, but she has to work with them. And frankly, I see the reasons why she does that. Not always, but often. So anyway, this is to say again that I think, I know I've spent a lot of time talking about this particular very small incident, but it encapsulates lots of attitudes that people have about this new set of Congress people, or the new progressive post Bernie 2016 I wouldn't say movement. Yes, a movement, or it's a small dollar donor movement of Justice Democrats and plus others, plus brand new Congress group that are really, I think, changing things slowly in Congress, and they need help. They need help from. They need social movements. They need to be pushed. They need criticism. All these things, but they're not so terrible. They're not they're not the enemy, the ultimate enemy of working people and of and in fact they're the friends. They're pretty good. They're quite good friends of ordinary people in the United States, and we need to work on growing their ranks, pushing them, of course, to do things that we want them to do, but also recognize them for their good efforts and their generally good, including, among other things, investigating Amazon, which AOC is involved with. So literally, she's helping out Chris Smalls in different ways, even though she didn't happen to appear at that rally. So anyway, I just want to see this kind of, there's this pose of I am so radical and I am such a grassroots person or whatever it is that I don't need to acknowledge that there are some politicians that are doing pretty good work and that they could be potential allies and we could work together. That maybe they're not doing exactly what I want, but they're pretty good, okay? So being able to acknowledge pretty good, be happy with, not happy is the wrong word, but to be somewhat appreciative of pretty good, and to say you're pretty good and we can do better together. So anyway, I think I could go maybe on a little longer about this or that. There's a lot of different complex layers of this. And I also want to just add very, very briefly that you need to be aware when you deal with someone like Tucker Carlson or the right wing is that they are a predatory, media presence, and they use appearances and language and so forth and so on in ways that are destructive and in ways that twist your meaning. So they're not just looking, even though you're saying the good things that you think are what you believe, you could be being used for their ideological and propagandistic efforts. So not to say that never, ever, ever appear on a Fox News channel, but think through all of the potential uses of your appearance, so that that you go in with full awareness of how it's going to be used, and whether you, for instance, need to make amends, okay, to someone. I'm thinking AOC, but anyway, amends later on, saying, "Hey, look, I wanted to get on, I wanted to get the message out, but let's in 2 months' time, let's do X event or something like that." So anyway, some thoughts. So please, if you liked this presentation, please like it, and also please share your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe we can. There's a lot of different ways you can imagine and make scenarios about how this particular appearance might have benefited or not benefited working people in the United States. But anyway, I hope you're also enjoying the content on Politics 2100 more generally. And if you are, please subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.